What nobody knows about this place is that there are zones on the planet where the map seems to go mute. They are areas where the lines of cartography become fragile, incapable of containing the vastness they represent. It is not the end of the world, even if it looks like it. It is the exact point where civilization admits there are forces it cannot domesticate. For centuries, human beings have tried to conquer space, measure time, and name the unknown, but there are corners that resist being catalogued. Chukotka is not simply a region in the far northeast of Russia, it is a geographical warning. It is a reminder that the Earth possessed an intense and silent life long before the first human eye opened to behold it. This is the tale of survival in its purest form, where existence is not taken for granted, but snatched day after day from the jaws of eternal winter. The geography of oblivion. The land here was not shaped by the gentle hand of gradual erosion, but by the force of cataclysmic events and the relentless pressure of ice. If we could accelerate the geological history of Chukotka, we would see a titanic battle between the fire of the subsoil and the weight of glaciers. What we perceive today as static mountains are, in reality, scars of that ancient war. The Pekulne Range and the Chukchi Highlands did not rise to touch the sky, but survived the crushing weight that tried to level them. The landscape unfolds like a canvas of severity and beauty. To the north, the Arctic Ocean pushes its blocks of ice against the coast, a white tide that never rests. To the east, the Bering Sea acts as the gateway to another continent, a liquid separation that in remote times was a bridge of solid land. This duality defines the geography of the region, for it is a place of connection and, at the same time, of absolute isolation. The rivers, like the immense Anadyr, do not flow with the placidity of continental waters. They snake like open veins over the tundra, desperately seeking the sea before winter turns them back into solid stone. Many are surprised to discover that the scale of Chukotka defies human perception. Its 720,000 square kilometers are a desert of contrasts. There are no trees to offer shelter nor landmarks to comfort the traveler. The tundra is an infinite carpet of mosses and lichens, a vegetal skin covering the permafrost, that permanently frozen ground that holds in its depths biological secrets from thousands of years ago. To walk here is to walk on suspended history. Beneath the surface, the earth is hard as steel, rejecting any attempt at deep agriculture, dictating a single law. Here, nothing takes deep root. Everything must learn to cling to the surface or disappear. However, there are people who always want to return because this hostile geography possesses a hidden wealth, a contradiction that has attracted both ambition and despair. The veins of the earth pulse with gold, coal, and rare metals, treasures buried under layers of ice that demand superhuman effort to be extracted. The geography of Chukotka gives nothing away. It charges a price for every gram of wealth, a toll of effort and will. It is a stage where the environment itself is the protagonist, a giant of stone and ice that watches impassively as civilizations try and often fail to leave their mark on its frozen skin. If the solid ground is the physical body of Chukotka, then the climate is undoubtedly its temperament. And we must understand something from the start. It is a temperament that knows no mercy nor negotiation. Upon entering this region, you quickly discover that what we call cold in other parts of the world is just a minor nuisance. Here, the cold is something else. It is not simply a reading on a thermometer or a passing weather condition. It is a physical presence, a living entity, heavy and tangible, that breathes, stalks, and constantly seeks any weakness in your protection. For 9 months of the year, winter does not merely cover the landscape, it erases it. Snow in Chukotka rarely falls vertically and poetically as in Christmas postcards. Here, the snow is a projectile. It is launched horizontally by winds that reach hurricane speeds, creating a phenomenon feared by locals and respected by explorers. The purga. This is not a common storm. It is a moving white wall, a mass of pulverized ice that eliminates visibility, wipes out the horizon, and annihilates the sense of orientation. For the unsuspecting traveler, the world dramatically reduces to the distance of their own extended arm. Beyond that distance, there is nothing, only a white and deafening roar. The atmosphere on this peninsula is a brutal lesson in humility for the modern human. Temperatures routinely drop to 40, 50, and even 60 degrees below zero in the interior. At these extreme points, the physics of everyday life changes in ways that seem like science fiction. Metal becomes brittle and can snap with a sharp blow. The rubber of tires hardens until it breaks as if it were cheap glass, and fuel turns into useless jelly if not treated properly. Human skin exposed to this air does not just feel cold, it suffers irreparable damage in a matter of minutes, freezing instantly. However, if you ask the local inhabitants, they will tell you that the true adversary, the real enemy, is not the number on the thermometer, but the wind. Katabatic winds are the true driving force of this frozen hell. These massive currents of air, cold and dense, descend heavily from the interior mountains and highlands toward the coast, gaining speed with gravity. They act as invisible but relentless chisels, eroding solid rock over millennia and tanning the skin of those who dare to inhabit these latitudes, leaving them with marks that tell stories of resilience. There is furthermore a strange and fascinating paradox in this climate, one that has to do with light and how it affects the human mind. When the brief summer arrives, the sun refuses to set. The region is submerged in a perpetual day, a midnight sun that completely disorients biological clocks. It is a season of collective insomnia and frenetic energy, where flora accelerates its life cycle in a desperate attempt to make up for lost time. But this light is ephemeral. When winter reclaims its throne, the light flees in terror. The polar night descends upon the land like a heavy, immovable lead curtain. For weeks and even months in the northernmost areas, the sun is just a distant memory, a faint promise that barely tinges the horizon dark blue for a couple of hours before disappearing again. In that prolonged darkness, human psychology is tested in a way few can understand without having lived it. The mind must fight not only against the exterior cold, which seeks to stop the heart, but against the interior shadows that grow when the world turns off. The lack of sunlight affects brain chemistry, and isolation becomes a challenge as great as physical survival. It is in this dark silence that the true character of the people of Chukotka is forged. Nevertheless, the sky, in its immense severity, offers a visual reward in exchange for this hardship, a spectacle reserved only for those who endure the darkness. The Northern Lights. Here they are not simple lights in the sky, they are living curtains of cold fire, emerald, violet, and crimson, dancing over the absolute void. Scientifically, we know it is the result of solar particles colliding with our atmosphere, reminding us that we are protected from cosmic radiation by an invisible magnetic field. But watching them undulate over the frozen tundra, it is hard not to feel something spiritual. It is a spectacle of solar force turned into ethereal beauty, a moving painting that makes the cold worthwhile. The climate of Chukotka is not a passive backdrop. It dictates the rhythm of absolutely everything. It controls the migration of whales on the coast, determines when bears enter their dens, and decides when men can travel or must take shelter. It is not a background for human activity. It is the conductor of the orchestra, a strict and authoritarian director. Every living being here, from the smallest lichen to the most experienced truck driver, must learn to play its melody or face the definitive silence that awaits those who defy the rules of the ice. The frontier of tomorrow. There is an invisible line that crosses the icy waters of the Bering Strait, a purely human construction imposed upon untamed nature, the international date line. Chukotka is, in a very literal sense, the place where the day begins for the entire planet. It is the vanguard of time. While the rest of the world, from New York to London, lives in the immediate past, here it is already tomorrow. This temporal curiosity endows the region with an almost mystical aura, turning it into a portal between the future and the present. If you stand on the wind-battered cliffs of Cape Dezhnev, the easternmost point of the entire Asian continent, you are at the edge of the known world. From there, on a clear day, one can look east through the mist of the sea and see something extraordinary, the Diomede Islands, and beyond them, in the distance, the mountains of Alaska. You are looking at yesterday in American territory. It is one of the few places on Earth where you can look at another continent and another day simultaneously. The situation of the Diomede Islands illustrates this geographical madness perfectly. Big Diomede belongs to Russia, Little Diomede to the United States. They are separated by barely 4 kilometers of dark, churning water. However, they are divided by 21 hours on the human clock. It is an insignificant physical distance, a stretch that a good swimmer or a small boat could cross in minutes, but chronologically, it is an abyss. In the depths of winter, when the Bering Sea freezes, forming a static and treacherous bridge of ice, a fascinating theoretical possibility arises. It would be possible to walk from the present into the past, or return from the future into today, simply by taking a few steps on the crunching ice. But this geographical proximity creates a palpable tension that has defined the region's recent history. During the tense years of the Cold War, this border was known as the Ice Curtain. While the Berlin Wall existed in Europe, here there was a wall of silence and surveillance between two nuclear superpowers. Indigenous families who had crossed these waters freely for millennia in their skin kayaks to trade, celebrate weddings, and share stories were suddenly separated by an invisible but impenetrable ideological barrier. Brothers remained on one side, cousins on the other, looking at the same sea but living in opposing political realities. The dateline became a scar, and the natural flow of humanity stopped by government decree. But geography, in its immense wisdom, ignores the politics of men. Massive ocean currents continue to flow, rich in nutrients, feeding ecosystems that do not understand borders. Schools of fish, grey whales, and immense flocks of migratory birds cross this imaginary line without a passport, completely ignoring the divisions we draw on maps. The Bering Strait is not, in its essence, a separation. It is an ancient scar of union, a memory of when the world was one. Thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, this strait was not water, but solid land. It was the Beringia Land Bridge, a vast, dry, cold prairie across which humanity took its most momentous steps. It was through here, through these very latitudes where waves break today, that prehistoric hunters chased mammoths and bison to enter the Americas. Populating a new hemisphere. Chukotka was the great lobby of the New World, the last known ground before the great exploration into the unknown. The DNA of the native peoples of the Americas has its deep roots in this Siberian soil. Today, the region remains as a solitary sentinel at the edge of time. The sensation that invades the traveler upon being here is that of having reached the end of the world, but that perception is deceptive. In reality, one is at the absolute beginning. Every sunrise that hits the black cliffs of Chukotka is the first sunrise of the civilized world. There is a silent and solemn responsibility in receiving the light before anyone else, in being the first global witness of the new day. This unique geographical position has forged a character of waiting and vigilance in the land itself and its inhabitants. It is a place that never looks back toward Moscow or Europe. It always looks forward toward the vast horizon of the Pacific, where the future arrives with the inevitability of the tide, reminding us that time, like the sea, is a force we cannot stop. In an environment that seems meticulously designed to limit and even eradicate life, the mere existence of a living being is an act of audacity and rebellion. Biology in Chukotka does not follow the rules of the tropics. Here, it is not about excessive abundance, but about ruthless efficiency and armored resistance. Every organism you see is the result of millions of years of extreme evolutionary engineering. Let's start by looking at the ground. The flora of the tundra is a miracle of miniaturization and strategy. On these storm-swept plains, there is no room for the vanity of the great oaks or tall pines we see in the south. The wind would knock them down, or the cold would freeze their sap before they could grow. Plant life here has learned a vital lesson: be humble to survive. It has learned to embrace the ground, to grow inward rather than upward. Polar willows, for example, are technically trees. They possess the genetic structure of a tree, but they are trees that barely rise a few centimeters from the ground. They look like creeping shrubs, forming complex and extensive underground networks to conserve the little heat the earth retains and to anchor themselves against the gales. Their leaves are small, waxy and tough, designed to retain moisture in an environment that ironically is very dry because the water is almost always frozen. However, when the brief and explosive summer months arrive, the tundra undergoes a transformation that defies logic. The grey and white landscape bursts into a frenzy of urgent color. Berries, mosses, lichens, and wildflowers of intense colors must complete their full reproductive cycles in a matter of weeks. They take advantage of the 24 hours of continuous sunlight to perform photosynthesis at a dizzying pace. It is a race against the biological clock, an explosion of biomass that must happen before the ice returns to reclaim everything. This ephemeral biomass feeds a fauna that is equally tenacious. The reindeer, the true monarch of these infinite plains, is a biological machine perfectly designed for the cold. It is not simply a deer, it is a living all-terrain vehicle. Its fur is a marvel of natural engineering. Each hair is hollow inside, trapping air to create a layer of thermal insulation so effective that snow does not melt on its back. Its hooves are wide and concave, acting as snowshoes to avoid sinking in winter. And as efficient shovels to dig through the ice in search of nutritious lichens. Even their eyes change color with the seasons to better utilize the light. They do not fight against the environment, they have become an extension of it. But the most amazing life, and perhaps the most intimidating, is found where the black earth meets the gray sea. The rocky coasts of Chukotka are the stage for massive congregations that overwhelm the senses. Walruses, giants of fat and muscle with immense ivory tusks, gather by the thousands on narrow beaches. The sound is deafening, a cacophony of bellows, and the smell is piercing. They seek rest on solid land because sea ice, their natural platform for resting between dives, recedes further each year due to global climate changes. Their massive presence on these coasts is a testament to the invisible richness of these cold waters. The sea here is not a void, it is a dense soup of nutrients driven by deep currents that bring life from the ocean floor, feeding a gigantic food web. And reigning above all, patrolling the blurred border between ice and water, is the polar bear, the great white predator. In Chukotka, the bear is not an occasional visitor, it is the undisputed owner of the landscape. Its ability to navigate the white desert is supernatural. It can detect prey from kilometers away just by smell and swim distances that would perish any other land mammal. The polar bear is the perfect symbol of this region, imposing, solitary, and perfectly adapted to a world that would be uninhabitable for an unprotected human in a matter of hours. Its fur is not white, but translucent, carrying sunlight towards black skin that absorbs heat, a brilliant adaptation for a world of ice. Seeing one of these giants move with silent elegance over the ice floe is to understand the true power of nature. The fauna of Chukotka teaches us a fundamental lesson. Life does not need comfort to thrive, it only needs a chance, however small. Every animal here, from the smallest lemming hiding under the snow to the immense grey whale emerging between the floes, represents an absolute victory of evolution. They are a pulsing and constant reminder that nature always, without exception, finds a way to continue even in the freezer of the world, where logic would tell us nothing should survive. The first human steps. Long before the cartographers of European courts drew arbitrary lines on paper and distant empires claimed sovereignty they could not exercise, there were human eyes that looked at this landscape and saw not a hostile desert, but a home full of possibilities. What most history books omit about this place is that the human narrative of Chukotka does not begin with the arrival of Russian explorers, nor with the flags of modern nations. It begins thousands of years ago in an era where the Beringia land bridge still connected continents, allowing the passage of giants and those brave enough to follow them. We speak of peoples who possessed an organic technology made of bone, skin, and stone, but which demonstrated a sophistication and resistance superior to any modern machine designed in a laboratory. The ancestors of the current Chukchi and Yupik did not arrive here by mistake, nor as castaways of history. They came with a purpose, following the great herds, reading the signs written in the northern lights, and anticipating the behavior of sea ice with a scientific precision that today we would struggle to replicate without satellites. They developed a relationship with the environment that was not based on dominance or conquest, but on a sacred pact of mutual survival. They quickly understood that to survive in the White Land, one cannot impose one's will. One must constantly negotiate with the brutal forces of the wind and the sea. They did not build stone cathedrals or great monuments to defy the sky, but cathedrals of invisible knowledge. They knew how to sew seal intestine skins with a stitch so fine they became waterproof against freezing water, a technique that saved lives in the ocean. They knew how to build sleds without a single nail, joining the pieces with raw leather straps so the structure could flex and move like a living organism over uneven terrain instead of breaking due to rigidity. Their survival depended on a keen capacity for observation, trained from childhood. They learned that the whale is not an enemy, but a gift voluntarily given to one who is worthy, that the polar bear is a brother who walks on two legs when he wants to look far and who must be deeply respected even when the encounter is inevitable. This worldview, where every rock, every gust of wind, and every animal possesses a vital essence, was not a simple superstitious belief. It was a brilliant psychological survival strategy. By endowing the world around them with spirit and consciousness, they were never truly alone in the terrifying vastness of the Arctic. The overwhelming silence of the tundra was full of voices and company for those who knew how to listen to the language of the land. These first inhabitants achieved what biologically seemed impossible, to thrive and laugh where the human body should not last more than a few hours without protection. They created a complex culture, rich in mythology, dances, and rituals, in a place where an error of judgment, a misreading of the weather, or carelessness with fire meant an immediate frozen outcome. Their footprints, though often invisible under layers of perpetual snow, are the unshakable foundations upon which any modern history of the region sits. They demonstrated that the human being is capable of adapting to any extreme situation if they have the unbreakable will and sufficient imagination to see resources where others only see emptiness. They did not conquer Chukotka. That would have been impossible. They became Chukotka. Their bodies adapted to the cold, their circadian rhythms adjusted to the polar night, and their diets specialized to obtain energy from the environment. And so, when modern history finally arrived centuries later with its steel ships and firearms, it met a people who had already been forged by the iron of the cold, a civilization ready to resist the next great change with the patience of an iceberg. Far from the coast, venturing into the vast interior where the horizon curves until it disappears into an indistinguishable mist of ice crystals and pale sky, lives a civilization in perpetual motion that defies our understanding of time and space. For the modern Western mind, accustomed to the security of concrete walls, fixed postal addresses, and static borders, the Siberian tundra seems a terrifying void, an uninhabitable white desert where life is an anomaly. But for the Chukchi reindeer herders, the Chowchu, this apparent void is full of signs, invisible paths, memories, and vibrant life. They do not inhabit the land in the traditional sense. They navigate over it like expert sailors on a solid ocean that changes with every storm. For this people, the concept of home is not tied to a fixed geographical coordinate or a permanent structure of brick and mortar, but to the breathing and constant presence of the herd. The reindeer is not simply livestock or an economic asset. It is the biological clock that marks the rhythm of their days and their absolute physical sustenance. It is the central axis upon which the herder's universe revolves, creating a dependence so deep and reciprocal that sometimes it blurs the dividing line between human and animal. Life in the interior tundra is a continuous cycle of migration that admits no pauses or doubts. Immobility in this environment is synonymous with the end. When moss and lichens, the vital food of the reindeer, are depleted under trampled and frozen snow, the community receives a silent but imperative signal. It is time to move. What follows is a choreography rehearsed and perfected over centuries of repetition. Dismantling the yaranga, the complex traditional dwelling made of cured reindeer skin and a light wooden frame, is not a chaotic move like the ones we know. It is a ritual of supreme efficiency. Every family member knows exactly what to do. In less than an hour, an entire family can erase their trace from the landscape, returning the place to nature. Heavy skins are folded with precise technique. Poles are tied to sleds with knots that do not freeze. And the fire, heart of the home, is respectfully extinguished. They merge once again with the infinite whiteness, leaving behind only silence and churned snow that the wind will erase before nightfall, as if they had never been there. This extreme mobility is their greatest defense and their oldest strategy. While the great sedentary empires of history have fallen and disappeared when their walls were breached or their cities besieged, the nomad survives and persists precisely because they offer no fixed target to adversity. You cannot besiege the wind. You cannot corner one who has no fixed center. However, there are people who, after trying sedentary life, always want to return to the tundra because this absolute freedom has a price that is paid every day with brutal physical endurance. The relationship between the herder and the reindeer defies any modern definition of agriculture or ranching. It is not total dominance or unilateral exploitation, but a tense and respectful symbiosis. The man protects the herd from invisible and visible predators, guides the way through blinding storms where visibility is zero. In return, the animal offers everything it is. It offers its sustenance for the body, its skin for clothing that is superior to any synthetic fabric, and its bones for tools. It is a contract signed millennia ago that is renewed every morning. In the absolute solitude of the tundra, under a sky that can remain in a violet and starry darkness for months in the polar winter, the herder's psychology begins to merge subtly with that of the animal. It is a profound phenomenon that outsiders rarely understand or perceive. Herders learn to think like the herd, to feel their fears and their needs. They develop an almost premonitory sensitivity to feel the subtle change of the wind before clouds gather on the horizon, to smell the metallic moisture of an incoming snowstorm from kilometers away. They read the snow as a scholar reads an ancient scroll full of wisdom. Every undulation on the surface, every texture of the ice, and every bluish shadow tells them a detailed story about the safety of the terrain or the proximity of wolves, and the wolves are always there, watching. They are the eternal shadow of the herd, the grey ghosts that constantly test the herder's vigilance, reminding him that in nature there are no power vacuums. The inevitable intrusion of the modern world has added a layer of fascinating and sometimes painful complexity to this ancestral struggle. Technology has introduced snowmobiles that roar and break the silence where before only the soft crunch of hooves and the sliding of skis were heard. And satellite phones that connect extreme isolation with instant global noise. But this modernity is fragile and deceptive in the Arctic. When gasoline freezes in the lines, when mechanical parts shatter from extreme cold or batteries die, man returns to depend solely on his instincts and ancient knowledge. The modern herder is, therefore, a fascinating hybrid, a figure who walks with one foot firmly in the traditions of the Stone Age and another in the 21st century, trying to maintain precarious balance in a world that changes faster than the seasons. Titans of the coast and the ritual of sustenance. Many travelers and observers are surprised to discover that while herders dominate the white and dry silence of the continental interior, on the dramatic edge where the land finally surrenders to the sea, another distinct lineage of survivors flourishes. They are the marine mammal hunters, a culture forged by salt and surf. The maritime Chukchi and their Yupik neighbors have looked at the ocean for millennia, not as an impassable barrier or a limit, but as an infinite, mysterious, and dangerous pantry. Here, geography changes drastically and violently. The monotonous plain gives way to dark cliffs battered by hurricane-force winds and beaches of black volcanic gravel where the Bering Sea roars with primordial force. On this liquid and treacherous frontier, obtaining the whale and other marine mammals is not a sport, nor even a commercial industry in the usual economic sense. It is the central and foundational act of their existence, both physical and spiritual. It is a recurring drama where the survival of the entire community depends on the encounter with the marine giant. The grey whale and the powerful bowhead whale are not seen by these peoples as mere natural resources or tons of meat and oil. They're considered complex entities with consciousness, soul, and free will, guests of honor inhabiting a parallel and sacred world beneath the waves. There is a deeply rooted and respected belief that the whale chooses to give itself to the hunter who proves worthy of such a gift. It is a moral exchange. If the hunter is not respectful, if he has bad thoughts, or if ancient rituals are not observed with precision, the whale will simply not appear or will hide under the unbreakable ice. The activity itself is a clash of disproportionate scales that defies logic. Men in small boats, traditionally umiaks made of walrus skin stretched over wood, launch themselves into leaden and freezing waters to challenge creatures of 30 or 40 tons of muscle and power. The setting where this occurs is intimidating and majestic. Blocks of floating ice the size of houses move with unpredictable currents. Capable of crushing a boat in seconds if the helmsman gets distracted. The water is at such a low temperature that immersion without proper gear causes a severe hypothermia problem in a matter of minutes. The sea does not forgive mistakes. The silence prior to the encounter is dense, charged with static electricity that everyone on board can feel. The leader of the party, standing at the prow with the harpoon ready, becomes the focal point of the story. In his hands and his aim, he holds the overwhelming responsibility of feeding hundreds of people during the long winter. The moment of the encounter is intense, fast, and chaotic. The sea churns violently, foam jumps freezing in the air, and shouts of coordination get lost in the wind. But, curiously, for those who observe carefully, this act is devoid of malice or cruelty. There is no hatred in the hunter's heart, only an absolute necessity and stoic bravery in the face of nature's force. When the marine giant is finally secured and slowly towed to the shore, the atmosphere on the beach changes radically. It is not an arrogant triumph of man over beast. There are no celebrations of vain conquest. What is breathed in the cold air is solemn and deep gratitude. The entire community, without exception, descends to the beach to receive the gift. Men, women, elders, and children participate in the processing. It is a frenetic race against time and the elements, a communal labor that must be performed with surgical precision before the cold freezes the sustenance and makes it impossible to work. Or before polar bears, attracted by the scent, arrive to claim their share. Nothing is wasted in this system. The skin and subcutaneous fat, known as muktak, are consumed with reverence and often raw, being a prized delicacy. In an extreme environment where citrus fruits or leafy vegetables do not grow, this fat and skin are the vital source of vitamins and energy that keeps the population healthy. The massive bones become structures for dwellings or pieces of carved art. The flexible baleen transforms into crafts and tools. The whale ceases to be a singular animal and literally transforms into the life and body of the people, integrating into their biology. This ceaseless cycle of life and sustenance creates a deep and tangible spirituality. The sea is perceived as a generous maternal entity, but also strict and demanding. Offerings are made to the water before departing, returning a part to ensure the future cycle. Modernity has brought more powerful outboard motors, radios, and steel tools, but it has not diminished the inherent risk nor the necessary reverence. Furthermore, a new challenge has arisen. Climate change is altering sea ice patterns in unpredictable ways. Coastal ice, which was once a solid and safe platform for spring, is now fragile and brittle, forcing hunters to venture much farther into open water. Increasing the danger exponentially. In a modern world that is increasingly disconnected from the origin of its food, where meat comes in aseptic plastic trays, the inhabitants of the Chukotka coast maintain a visceral, direct, and honest connection with their food. They understand the real price of life and the weight of survival because their own hands work directly under the cold and salt to obtain it from the sea. The history of Chukotka is not a straight line flowing calmly like a river in summer. It resembles more the ice when it cracks under extreme pressure. For thousands of years, life here followed a predictable rhythm dictated solely by reindeer migrations and snow thickness. But that continuity was violently broken in the 20th century. What happened in these remote lands was not simply a change of government or a new flag waving on the pole. It was a drastic paradigm shift, a frontal collision between two universes that had no way of understanding each other. The arrival of the new Soviet political system to this forgotten corner of the map represented a clash of worldviews as brutal as it was fascinating. You have to imagine the visual and psychological contrast of that moment. On one side, you had a millennia-old culture, deeply organic, living in perfect symbiosis with nature's cycles. It was a society that did not measure time in hours, but in seasons. And that did not value the accumulation of goods, but the capacity to move fast and light. On the other side, an ideology arrived obsessed with heavy industry, standardization, concrete, and the conquest of nature. When the new administrators arrived from the west, they looked at the vastness of Chukotka and did not see the ancestral wisdom that had allowed humans to survive there for millennia. They did not see the complexity of their social networks nor their deep knowledge of the ice. What they saw was, from their perspective, a problem that needed solving. They saw backwardness. For these bureaucrats, the tundra was a blank page, an empty space that had to be rewritten under the rules of modernity. Civilization arrived dressed in bureaucracy, with briefcases full of production quotas, infinite forms, and rules designed in offices thousands of kilometers away. By people who had never felt the cold of 40 degrees below zero. But here is where history becomes truly complex and dark. It was not just about building buildings, it was about rebuilding the human being. The process known as collectivization was much more than an economic reform. It was a systematic attempt to dismantle the nomadic way of life. The system did not tolerate people who moved freely because those who move cannot be controlled, nor censused, nor taxed efficiently. Spiritual leaders, shamans, and guardians of oral memory were strictly forbidden from practicing. They were seen as enemies of progress, relics of a superstitious past that had to be eradicated. Their drums were broken or burned, and their sacred objects confiscated. Imagine what it means for a community to have its connection to the divine and its ancestors ripped away from one day to the next. Reindeer herders, men and women born under the open sky, were urged and often forced to leave their traditional skin dwellings to move into static structures of wood and concrete. This was not just a change of postal address, it was something that contradicted centuries of instinct and constant movement. An attempt was made to convert the independent, self-sufficient, and proud hunter into a salaried worker of the system, just another cog in a giant machine. It was a social experiment of a magnitude that is hard to grasp today. However, what really sealed Chukotka's fate was not ideology, but geology. The things you can find under the earth changed the region's future forever. We found tin, immense deposits of gold, mercury, and, most critical for the time, uranium. They were vital resources to feed the industrial and military machinery of a superpower preparing to dominate the global stage. Suddenly, Chukotka's isolation ended. Orders were given to open mines in places where the climate was so extreme that metal cracked like glass and truck tires disintegrated. But the logistical question was enormous. Who was going to build these mines? Who was going to work in the white hell? The region saw thousands and thousands of people arrive, sent to these confines to work. Many did not come of their own free will. These labor camps are a dark and painful part of history that cannot be ignored. The roads that today traverse parts of the region, known locally as roads built on bones, are literally cemented on the superhuman effort of those who worked in conditions that defied the limits of biological endurance. Men and women chipping frozen stone with rudimentary tools, building the path so trucks could take the gold and tin toward the center of the empire. It is true, and it must be said to have the complete picture, that this era brought tangible advances. Formal education arrived, modern medicine that reduced infant mortality, and electricity which brought light to the long polar night. The material quality of life improved in many technical aspects. But the price to pay was a deep cultural alteration, a wound in the collective identity. A generation was created trapped between two worlds, educated in a new system, learning Russian and mathematics. But born of ancient traditions that their parents could no longer practice openly. They grew up hearing slogans about the radiant future while their grandparents wept in silence for the lost past. And then, the unthinkable happened. When the system collapsed in 1991, all that artificial infrastructure, which depended on a constant flow of money and fuel from the West, began to fail. It was as if someone had cut the life support cable. Ships with supplies stopped arriving with the same frequency. Planes no longer landed. Suddenly, the provider state, which had forbidden old ways of subsistence, disappeared overnight, leaving behind a people who had to remember at full speed and under threat of starvation how to survive by their own means when the lights go out and central heating stops working. Ruins of a concrete utopia. If you have the opportunity to travel today through the deep interior of Chukotka, the things you can find will leave you breathless. Not for their natural beauty, but for the visual impact of their abandonment. The landscape, immense and empty, is dotted with surreal vestiges of that recent industrial past. They are concrete scars in the middle of nowhere, but the most striking example, the crown jewel of this post-industrial disaster, is undoubtedly the city of Ultin. Imagine the scene. You are driving for hours on an unstable gravel road surrounded by grey mountains and infinite tundra. You haven't seen a soul in hundreds of kilometers, and suddenly, crossing a mountain pass, you see a complete modern city appear on the horizon. You see 5-story apartment blocks, cultural centers, wide avenues, schools. Your brain takes a moment to process what it sees because there shouldn't be a city there. You approach with the vehicle and the silence hits you physically. There are no cars, no smoke in the chimneys, no people walking. Ultin is a city stopped in time, a massive time capsule with its empty buildings blindly looking at the mountains. These are the traces of a titanic industrial project that challenged the climate and lost. Walking through the streets of Ultin nowadays is a modern archaeological experience that makes your hair stand on end. It is not like visiting Roman ruins from 2,000 years ago. This feels fresh, recent, painfully close. You enter an apartment with the door banging in the wind and find everyday objects left behind, as if people had evaporated in the middle of dinner. You can see teacups still on tables covered in a layer of dust from decades. You see children's toys thrown on the floor. Schoolbooks open to a lesson from 1993, calendars on walls marking dates of a year that passed long ago. The feeling is unsettling because everything suggests a hasty flight. But the reality is less dramatic and more tragic in economic terms. These cities were abandoned because the logic that created them ceased to exist. Ultin was not an organic city that grew because people wanted to live there. Ultin existed for a single purpose, to extract minerals. It was a machine for living to serve the mine. When the economy changed in the 90s and the price of maintaining a city in the Arctic exceeded the value of what they extracted, Ultin ceased to be viable. The closure order came and was absolute. Heating was cut, power was cut. In this climate, a house without heating is not a shelter, it is a tomb of ice. People had to leave, often in a matter of days, leaving almost everything behind because transport costs were astronomical. What didn't fit in a suitcase stayed. Now, decades later, nature is reclaiming what is hers with slow but unstoppable violence. Permafrost does not forgive the arrogance of human architecture. Building foundations which are not kept artificially cold or that transfer heat to the ground cause the earth to melt and move. Buildings sink, tilt, and twist as if they were made of rubber. Concrete cracks under brutal freeze-thaw cycles. Metal rusts at an astonishing speed due to humidity and wind. The tundra is literally invading living rooms. You can see thick moss growing on sofas, dwarf birches sprouting through floor cracks on a second floor. It is a brutal visual reminder that our presence here in the far north is tolerated but never guaranteed. However, there is something else here. If you manage to look beyond the sadness of abandonment, you will find a haunting beauty in these ruins. They narrate the story of resistance and the adaptability of those who lived there. Here, in the middle of nowhere, people fell in love, formed families, celebrated birthdays, and lived full lives while outside temperatures fell to 50 degrees below zero. For locals still living in the region, these places are not just industrial trash. They are repositories of memories. They are the place where they had their first kiss or where they learned to read. The presence of these massive structures serves as a constant and humble lesson for anyone visiting the region. In Chukotka, any attempt to dominate the land through the brute force of engineering is temporary. You can bring all the concrete and steel you want. You can build empires and draw up 5-year plans, but in the end, the ice always gains ground. The silence always returns. Yultin is the definitive monument to the fragility of human ambitions in the face of the eternity of the Arctic climate. And while the wind howls among empty buildings, one cannot help but wonder how much time will pass until the tundra completely erases any trace that we were ever here. Listening to all this, you might legitimately think that after decades of forced changes, bans, industrialization, and subsequent economic collapse, the indigenous culture of Chukotka would have disappeared completely. It would be logical to assume they were crushed by the wheel of history, but underestimating the resilience of this people is a fundamental error. Despite systematic attempts at assimilation and re-education, the original spirit of Chukotka was never extinguished. What they did was something much smarter and subtler than direct confrontation. They became discreet, they became invisible. During the hardest years of cultural repression, they learned to play the system's game. To the public, they were model citizens of the new order, efficient workers following the rules. But in private, the story was different. Like the roots of Arctic trees spreading deep underground to survive surface cold, spirituality took refuge in the domestic sphere, in the dim light of homes, in the whispered memory of elders. The connection to the land in this region is not an organized religion with temples and holy books. It is something much more intrinsic. It is a way of being in the world, a technology of consciousness. It is the deep understanding that everything is alive, that the river, the mountain, and the bear have spirit and deserve respect. And that understanding cannot be erased by a government decree. And now, many outsiders are surprised when they see what is happening currently. We are witnessing a silent but incredibly powerful renaissance. The youth of Chukotka, a generation that handles digital technology, edits videos on their phones, and knows the world through the internet, are doing something unexpected. They are returning to their roots. Instead of looking toward the big cities of the West as the only escape route, they are looking back so they can move forward with strength. Traditional dances, which for years were reduced to folk shows for tourists or visiting officials, are recovering their deep and ritual meaning. One no longer dances just to entertain, one dances to connect. The sound of the drum, that rhythmic beat mimicking the earth's heart, is once again the gravitational center of the community. It is a sound that awakens a genetic memory, something that was asleep but not lost. But perhaps the most important battle is being waged in the terrain of words. Language is today a field of urgent recovery. There is a struggle to preserve native languages not just for nationalist pride, but because they contain the technical keys to understand the environment. These languages evolved over thousands of years in this specific landscape. They have precise words to describe dozens of different states of snow, nuances in wind behavior, or ice texture that have no direct translation into Russian or English. Losing those words would mean losing the ability to read the reality of the environment in high definition. It would be going blind to the dangers and gifts of the tundra. This renaissance has given rise to a fascinating cultural mix, a hybrid that defies stereotypes. It is not uncommon to see a modern hunter prepare his gear with state-of-the-art technology, high-precision rifles, satellite GPS, powerful snowmobiles. But before leaving, that same man stops and makes an offering to the land, pours a little tea or leaves tobacco on the ground, asking permission and protection from the spirits of the place. For them, there is no contradiction whatsoever. Traditions have adapted, have absorbed modernity without being devoured by it. Cultural resistance here is not a rejection of technological progress. No one wants to go back to living without heating, without medicine, or without the comforts that make life in the Arctic more bearable. It is not a naive romanticism, it is a fierce insistence on identity. It is the affirmation that one can be part of the global world, be connected and be modern, without ceasing to be a child of this land. These people have survived the czars, survived communism, survived the chaos of wild capitalism in the 90s, and they are still here. Their culture is not a museum piece covered in dust, it is something living, breathing, and changing. In the end, the story of Chukotka teaches us that empires fall, concrete cities crack and sink, ideologies go out of style, but the relationship between the human being and the earth, if based on respect, is the only thing that truly endures. And as the sun sets over the Bering Strait, illuminating a land that has seen so much pain and so much beauty, it becomes clear that the spirit of Chukotka has not only survived, but is ready to face anything the future holds. The sleeping giant awakes. While native people's culture experiences a spiritual renaissance, a much more physical and threatening situation begins to brew beneath their feet. What most outsiders do not know about this place is that the soil of Chukotka is not simply inert earth. It is a guardian of ancient secrets. Beneath that green carpet of moss and lichens extending to the horizon lies the permafrost. This layer is not just cold earth, it is a complex geological structure, a mixture hard as concrete composed of earth, rocks and ice that has remained in a state of deep freeze for tens of thousands of years. It functions as an immense planetary safety vault, trapping inside organic matter from past eras and greenhouse gases that the modern atmosphere has not seen in millennia. But that vault, which we believed unbreakable, is beginning to fail. The ice locks are melting. The change in global temperatures is not an abstract theory discussed in academic conferences here. In the Arctic, it is a physical, tangible, and violent reality. The north of the planet is warming at a speed that doubles and even triples the rate of the rest of the world. When permafrost melts, a terrifying phenomenon for infrastructure occurs. The ground loses its structural cohesion. What yesterday was solid ground capable of supporting concrete buildings, today becomes an unstable swamp. The consequences are visible to the naked eye. In cities and settlements of the region, foundations of Soviet buildings fracture with a dry sound, like gunshots in the night. Water and gas pipes, designed for a static environment, twist and break as the ground moves, leaving entire communities without basic services in the middle of winter. Landing strips, vital for food and medicine supplies, ripple as if they were sea waves frozen in asphalt, making every landing a high-risk maneuver. It is not just a logistical problem, it is the collapse of human civilization in the region before a nature that is changing the rules of the game. However, the greatest danger is invisible. Upon thawing, the ground begins to breathe. It releases methane and carbon dioxide that have been trapped since the time of mammoths. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. The more ice melts, the more gases are released, and the more gases there are, the more the temperature rises. It is an engine that feeds itself and has the potential to alter the climate of the entire planet, not just Russia. Added to this is coastal erosion, advancing with a veracity never seen before. Formerly, sea ice formed a natural barrier protecting the coast from fierce autumn storms. That white shield absorbed the waves' energy. Now, with sea ice retreating due to longer summers, the ocean impacts directly against the soft and thawed earth of the cliffs. The result is devastating. Entire villages, which have existed at those coordinates for centuries, watch helplessly as meters of their ground fall into the sea year after year. Ancient cemeteries and modern houses are devoured by the water. It is a crisis redrawing the map of Chukotka in real time, not by the hand of explorers or cartographers, but by the brute force of nature itself. Chukotka is sending us an urgent message, and the time to listen is running out. The sound defining the present in these latitudes is no longer just the howl of the polar wind, but the metallic crunch of ice breaking before reinforced steel prows. Accelerated melting has awakened a strategic interest that remained dormant for decades. Suddenly, major world powers have remembered that the Arctic exists and is opening up. What was once an impassable desert of ice now reveals new maritime routes that could change the global economy forever. The Northern Sea Route, bordering the entire coast of Chukotka, is the crown jewel on this new geopolitical chessboard. This route promises to drastically shorten shipping times for goods between the great markets of Europe and the factories of Asia. In the current global economy, where time is literally money and efficiency is measured in hours, the possibility of saving 2 weeks of travel by avoiding the Suez Canal is an irrefutable argument. Cargo ships would no longer have to circle the globe, they could simply pass over the top. For this reason, Chukotka has once again become a strategic point of the First Order. Ports that remained inactive or frozen for much of the year are being re-evaluated and modernized with million-dollar investments. Infrastructures abandoned since the fall of the Soviet Union are being revitalized, and state-of-the-art technology for satellite navigation and border surveillance is being implemented. It is an assertion of sovereignty and presence in a region becoming navigable and therefore valuable. There are people and governments who always want to return to these places because they understand that the North is no longer the forgotten periphery of the world. It is becoming a new center of attention and international tension. However, this fever for maritime transport brings with it monumental risks that did not exist before. The increase in traffic of icebreakers, freighters, and exploration vessels generates unprecedented underwater noise pollution. The Arctic Ocean, which used to be a sanctuary of silence, now vibrates with the noise of engines and sonars. This severely interferes with marine life. Whales, walruses, and other marine mammals depend on sound to communicate, hunt, and navigate in the darkness of the depths. Human noise creates an acoustic fog that disorients them, separates mothers from calves, and alters their millennia-old migration routes. Furthermore, there is a constant worry keeping ecologists awake. The risk of environmental incidents in icy waters. A fuel spill in the Arctic would be catastrophic. Current technology to clean oil spills is ineffective in conditions of ice and extreme temperatures. Oil mixes with ice, sinks, and persists for decades due to slow biological degradation in the cold. Chukotka finds itself right now at a historical crossroads. It must decide if it will become a global corridor of industrial trade or if it will fight to maintain its natural integrity. The balance is precarious and decisions made today will resonate for centuries. The economy of extraction versus eternity. If the sea has become the world's new highway, the solid land is the treasure vault that has been thrown wide open. Beneath the imposing and desolate mountains of Chukotka hide resources the modern world devours with greed: massive veins of gold, silver, high-purity copper, and coal. Modern mining has arrived at this final frontier, not with picks and shovels, but with immense and futuristic technological scale. Autonomous machines the size of houses and dump trucks with wheels taller than a human being operate day and night in the region to extract materials, fueling the global technological maelstrom. It is highly probable that the electronic device you have in your hand or pocket contains particles of copper or precious metals torn from the ground in remote places like this. The connection between your daily life and the Chukotka tundra is much more direct than you imagine. For the fragile local economy, mining offers a lifeline of stability and well-paid jobs, something vital in a region where the cost of living is astronomical. Cities like Pevek, which were on the brink of becoming ghost towns, survive and thrive today thanks to this extractive industry. Human engineering has reached the point of deploying radical solutions to keep these operations running. A clear example is the arrival of floating nuclear power plants, true marvels of naval engineering designed to supply electricity and heat to these isolated mining operations. Seeing a nuclear plant floating in the Arctic Ocean is a sci-fi image come true, a testament to how far humans will go for energy and resources. But the price of this progress is the irreversible alteration of the landscape. An open-pit mined mountain changes geography forever. The scar on the land is permanent. Tundra ecosystems are extremely delicate and take centuries to recover from any disturbance. Indigenous peoples watch this transformation with a complex mix of economic necessity and deep spiritual concern. Money flows, stores have products, and there is heating in homes, but the inevitable question arises of whether the long-term environmental cost is worth it. Chukotka's dilemma is, in essence, the dilemma of all modern humanity amplified by the extreme environment. We want to preserve virgin and wild nature, but we desperately need the resources it holds to maintain our technological lifestyle. Here, at the end of the world, that transaction is not hidden behind invisible supply chains. Here, the transaction is visible, brutal, and direct. The earth opens, metal comes out, and the landscape changes. There are no intermediaries in this reality. Amidst these tectonic shifts in climate and economy, the crucial question about the human factor arises. Who will inherit this land when the old ones are gone? The demographics of Chukotka face an existential challenge. Today's youth live a hyper-connected reality, very different from that of their grandparents who only knew the horizon of the tundra. Through satellite, internet, and social media, they see in real time what life is like in Moscow, St. Petersburg, or Europe. They see warmer, more comfortable places with cinemas, shopping malls, and infinite opportunities. This digital window generates an understandable desire to explore softer horizons. Life in the Arctic is hard, relentless, and sometimes lonely, causing many to leave their hometowns as soon as they finish school in search of education and opportunities in the big cities of the mainland. It is an exodus of talent and energy threatening to depopulate the region of its native people. However, against all statistics, there is a fascinating and growing movement of young people choosing to stay, or, even more surprisingly, return after studying abroad. They do not do it because they lack options, but out of a conscious and radical choice of identity. They are rediscovering the value of their heritage, not as a burden of the past, but as a tool of empowerment for the future. These new guardians of the tundra are creating a unique fusion between the old and the new. They are reindeer herders who use drones to monitor their herds from the air and GPS to navigate migration routes, but who still wear traditional furs because they know no synthetic material protects better from the cold. They are activists, digitizing their language and legends to preserve them in the cloud, ensuring the voice of their ancestors is not lost in digital noise. They understand that culture is not something static kept in a museum, but something living that must adapt to survive. They understand that being part of this indigenous culture in the 21st century means carrying the wisdom and resistance of the past into the technological future. They are the first generation in their people's history with the ability to tell their own story to the world directly, without intermediaries, through blogs, videos, and digital art. Their permanence on the land of their parents is a powerful act of resistance. As long as there is someone young who knows the names of the winds, the secrets of the land, and how to survive on the ice, Chukotka will remain a living and vibrant home, not just a resource map to be exploited by distant corporations.